In a short few days, we have a card releasing in Marvel Snap that has the biggest hype train that I have seen since probably like collector's tokens or maybe even global launch. It goes that far back. This is crazy how hyped up people are for this card. And that card is Kang the Conqueror. Now, I'm really hyped for this card as well. It looks incredibly fun. But where I become concerned is that from what I've gathered on the interwebs and my friends and the discords and all that kind of things, is that people seem to be saving up their tokens for this card. They're reaching out to me and being like, Drew, I don't know what to get, but let me tell you, I'm saving up my tokens for Kang the Conqueror. He's the card that I'm willing to buy. We're talking like a month or 2 months of grinding out dailies, just grinding away to get those 100 token chests so that you can accumulate all the way to 6,000 so that you can finally get yourself a Series 5 card on release. This is no easy feat, and it's a lot of investment of your time to get this new card. If it doesn't end up being a very fun card, if it doesn't become very viable, if you throw it in a deck for a week and then all of a sudden that deck's not working, you got to go back to that other thing to like grind ladder because that's your goal, then that's not going to feel very good. Is Kang that card? Is he not going to feel good? Is he a bait? A token bait or what? Well, I don't 100% know. I'm just doing right now what we're going to do in this video. We're outlining the good and the bad. We're going to provide even counter arguments to both. We're even going to talk about potential scenarios that kind of outline how his mechanic is going to work. And then maybe you can make the decision on whether Kang is worth it for you. And if I am wrong, if you believe that he's going to be strong for one reason or another, respectfully, please let me know in the comments below. I am still looking for insights onto an excuse to buy this card. I'm not totally sold on getting it yet. So I'm still trying to figure out whether it's worth it for me or not. Currently, you're probably going to get a vibe here that I'm not really on the Kang train. I think it's going to be kind of weak, even though if it's really going to be fun and the variants are absolute fire. If there's one thing I hope for with Kang here is that he ends up having the most variants in the game. That'd just be thematically amazing. Which almost brings me to another point, is that there's so much cinematic hype behind this card with him becoming the new supervillain in the Marvel universe, in the Hollywood universe anyways, that almost kind of translates into the hype for Kang in the game, when really they're two separate entities. And like, if just because he's a supervillain in Hollywood doesn't mean he's going to be a super good card in Marvel Snap. Okay, but what is Kang? So he's a 5/0. That doesn't matter, okay? We're going to talk about the cost in a second, but the power does not matter. The power doesn't do anything, not from what I understand. And the effect is, on reveal, look at what your opponent did, then restart the turn without Kang. Seems simple, right? Okay, the turn's going to restart, and then I don't have Kang. Okay, I get it. I understand the card. That seems pretty good. I get to see what my opponent's going to do. That's great. I understand it. Well, no, there's a few things that we gotta cover. There's more to this effect than it seems. And it's honestly, for the game, it's incredibly unique. And I really appreciate that. It might end up feeling toxic because it essentially adds another turn to the game. And people like the fast pace of Marvel Snap. And if you're adding an extra turn, then there's a turn 7. All of a sudden, the game is just taking a little bit longer than you signed up for. But regardless, it's pretty darn cool. The cost, I want to talk about the cost really quick because you can play this on turn 5, but that's not the optimal way to play Kang. You probably want to play Kang on turn 6. That seems like the best time to play Kang because you want to know what your opponent's final turn is going to be. You want to know what they're going to finish this game off with, their big power move. You could also do it on turn 7 if Magic was played prior or if Limbo's on the board. So to get a better understanding of the mechanics of Kang, let's look at a quick scenario that I've built here. All right, so first of all, my scenario might not be perfect. I'm just using this as an example, okay? To just illustrate some of the little nuances with Kang, okay? So it's turn 6. You've snapped, okay? We're the collective we on my side of the board, okay? We've snapped, and we have 2 squirrels at Sanctum Sanctorum. Nobody's played a card there. We're tied. Down the middle, we played Professor X, and we're winning that location. Huzzah. But on the right, we are desperately losing, and the cloning vats is there, and our opponent has that Nightcrawler, and it can move. I can't make it move, but it can move. So our opponent's probably going to move the Nightcrawler and then play a card there, as we might imagine. But what card is it going to be? What do I need from all of my counter options here to beat my opponent? Well, we're going to find out because we're going to play Kang next turn at the cloning vats. That is our game plan. Boom. But right before we did it anyways, but right before we did, our opponent snapped. So they've snapped, we've played Kang, they moved Nightcrawler, and they played a double dino. That's essentially what has happened in this turn right here. Now, they got the second dino from the cloning bats, right, after playing the first one. So what is going to happen? There's a few things we have to consider here, right? Okay, first of all, I don't even know 100% if the cloning bats would give us a copy of Kang before his on reveal triggers, but for the sake of an example, I'm going to say yes, because I just want to talk about when there's a second Kang in your hand, whether it was through Moon Girl or whatever, right? What would happen to the copy of Kang? And also if you generate a card to your hand. I think it has the same impact of all the other things, your destroys, your discards, your moves. So another thing is the move. Nightcrawler moved over to the left. Is he going to revert his move? And the Devil Dino. Is the Devil Dino going to go back to the hand, right? What about the snap? What about the snap? Is the snap going to revert? Is your opponent going to have to snap again on the following turn, and the stakes will go back to 4 cubes instead of 8? All right, let's see what happens. Okay, and as you probably guessed, this is also just my best guess. I could be completely wrong, but this is how I understand this card, is that basically everything went back to the way it was, but surprise, surprise, Kang has vanished. He is no more. He is gone. Not only Kang, the one that we played on the board, but also the copy in the hand. I don't envision a scenario where Team Second Dinner would allow you to just like play Kang on repeat, right? So if I could just keep generating Kangs from the cloning vats, right, then that's a bit toxic. It's an endless game, and I just keep you in this endless cycle. So I have a feeling that, the text doesn't specify that specific Kang disappears. It just says Kang disappears. It's kind of like the Sentinel. Sentinel adds a Sentinel to your hand. It's not saying like a copy of this. It's just another Sentinel. So I feel like Kang is just going to disappear. Like all of the Kangs just vanish. So I almost, to add to that, if there was a Kang at nowhere or got Cosmoed or something, I feel like that one would vanish too. I feel like all the Kangs just disappear. And that's actually the one scenario where maybe the power of Kang matters, because it's 0. Right? And then you could buff it later on if it's on the field, if it's on reveal, got rejected or got silenced or something along those lines. So I guess the power isn't totally irrelevant, but in most case scenarios it is, right? Because he just disappears. Okay, so the copy's gone. That's the way I envision it. Any card, let's say any card was added to the hand on that turn, gone. It disappears, okay? Randomly generated, gone. If you randomly generate something the following turn because you want to do it again, right? I feel like it would be a different card. It's going to be randomly a different card. We can also talk about our draw. Let's say we drew Killmonger right before we played Killmonger, right? On turn 6, Killmonger was our draw. Well, I imagine you're going to draw the exact same card. The deck is shuffled in a certain way at the beginning of the game, and it stays that way, right? So you're going to draw Killmonger once more. Now, what if you drew Kang? What if Kang was the draw? Well, then it's almost like deck thinning in a way, because the card disappears and you can draw something else, because you're still going to draw a card. So top decking Kang on turn 6 is like the best thing imaginable, as I understand it. Also, the Nightcrawler went back. Movement reverted. Discard reverted. Destroy reverted. All that stuff, it goes back. The Dino, back to the hand. Now, we have an interesting situation here, okay? So what happens now? We know what our opponent wants to do. They want to throw the Nightcrawler over to the left, and then they want to play a Dino. Naturally, the best line of play, I imagine, is playing the Enchantress, right? That would give us 10 power. It would suck the life out of those dinos. We know our opponent has priority, right? Because they have more power than us. So is that the play? Then your opponent ends up at 6, 8 power. We win the game with 10 power with the Enchantress at the cloning bats. Yeah, that seems pretty good if our opponent plays a Dino. See, if they play anything else that has a little bit more power, right? Because we're only winning with 2 power in that situation, then we're going to lose. And your opponent snap reverted. I'm pretty sure it's the entire turn, dude. I think it's the snap. I think it's everything involved with what happened in the previous turn gets reverted. It's a little blimp in time. It just goes back. So maybe this scenario isn't all that great. We can make a whole bunch. Like, let's talk about maybe Angela, Bishop, these kind of cards that stack on power. What happens to them, right? If I played Kang at the Angela location, gave her +2 power, but then he disappears and restarts the turn, is she going to have that +2 power? The answer is no. I'm not convinced that she is going to. I think it's going to completely revert the turn as if Kang wasn't even played. The value that you get out of Kang is you get to see what your opponent has in their hand, what they want to play, and where they want to play it on that final turn. This is game-winning knowledge, but I don't know if it's enough, and there's a few things about it I don't love. So let's get to the pros and cons. Okay, so let's really break this down. I'm going to provide counter arguments to basically every single one. So we're going to rip through this, okay? So the good and the bad. We're going to go one for one, okay? So the good, free to play. You play the card. It's like you didn't spend anything because the turn, let's say it's turn 6, rolls over once more. You have 6 energy, but you played a 5 energy card. Doesn't matter. The turn restarted and you got to see what your opponent has. So he's free. But he's not quite free because there's the opportunity cost at hand. You see, Kang could have been something else. It could have been a different card, maybe a game-winning card, part of your combo. Who knows? You drew the card. So that's almost like losing a draw, essentially, unless, like I said earlier, you top deck Kang on the turn that you want to play him. That is the best possible time. That's not going to happen every time. In fact, it's hard to set up that scenario where it always consistently happens. So for the most part, he's going to be an opportunity cost. It could have been something else. Let's say you drew him like turn 1, you don't have a 1-dropper, 2-dropper, or something like that. That's gonna kind of suck. It's almost like one of the worst cards to pair with Chavez, which is kind of funny because Chavez is always going to be drawn on 6, and that's the turn that you want to draw Kang on. But the opportunity cost also isn't all that bad, right? Because you probably don't want to play your entire hand anyways. You're going to play Kang, and then I'm sure you got a few other options in your hand that you're ready to play, so it's not the worst in the world. Very rarely, I imagine you're going to have Kang and then one other card. So no matter what, you're playing that card. Maybe you're just trying to figure out where to play it and you want to see what your opponent's going to do. So maybe that's okay. So the opportunity cost isn't the worst thing in the world. Being free to play, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Also provides information. Information is the most crucial thing about Kang. You get to know what's in your opponent's hand. That's a very powerful mechanic. And actually, it's on the last turn. So you know what your opponent really, really wants to do and where they want to do it. So sometimes maybe you're locked in. That's why in my previous example, I had a lot of locked in locations because I think that's almost one of the best ways to play Kang, even though you have the flexibility of knowing where they're going to play. You don't want to create confusion. See, because if your opponent has a lot of options of where to play cards, that's where it's going to get really difficult. If you're not winning like 1 or 2 locations, if you don't have it pretty well set up, you're not going to get that checkmate on your opponent that you were hoping. If anything, now you're going to be thinking of those 20 different scenarios where they might play that specific card. A card, mind you, that you might have already known they were running. You see, there's a lot of meta decks in Marvel Snap, and you can kind of already assume what your opponent wants to do. Did they just play Black Panther at the Wong location? Well, they're probably going to play Arnim Zola. So, like, you knew that anyways. The Kang just confirmed it. But now, do they actually play the Arnim Zola there, or do they Taskmaster elsewhere? Do they have Taskmaster in hand? How many cards do they have in hand? I got to check. You look, and they have like 6 cards. They have 6 cards, 3 open locations, like with possible win conditions. Like, even if you saw the cards that one turn, you don't exactly know how they're going to pull out the win here. On top of that, you got to hope that the cards in your hand are enough to win because Kang's not actually helping you win. It's just, giving you some information on your opponent. You still have to find the power, the combos in your hand to win the game. So while it does set up a potential checkmate, and I do love that it can do that, I think with the right deck, you set it up, it's going to be really nasty. If you eliminate your opponent's options in their hands, right, with, I don't even know, maybe some Black Bolt shenanigans or who knows, whatever else, get rid of cards or stuff their hand full of rocks, that kind of thing. That'd be great. But also, if you limit the amount of locations that they can actually play cards, you just really, really limit the possible plays so that when they show you that play that they really want to do, then you can kind of assume, okay, that's what they got. I'll figure out how to win. I already touched on this, but it restarts everything. So those little buffs, those little hopeful, oh, what if this happens? What if that? Even if you negatize your deck with Mr. Negative or whatever else, anything that you do that turn is reset. That is how I'm interpreting this card. And unfortunately, that's bad. It would be probably broken if it maintain the buffs, because then you could do some like crazy shenanigans maybe on the Kang turn where you can buff things, or the Angela value would be great, or the Bishop value would be great. Who knows? I don't even know if it's all that crazy. The reason I say it doesn't work with negative is because of that full reset, right? So it would be awesome if you can negatize Kang, so he's 0 cost to play, and then you play a bunch of other things and they get all buffed on that Bishop and stuff, and you have this like crazy miracle deck, but it doesn't work because the turn resets, right? And then you don't even have Kang anyways. So Kang's already free to play. You don't have to swap him around with Mr. Negative, so I don't think the two work together at all. Again, if you top deck a Kang on that turn 6, maybe then it's good, because Mr. Negative decks, they always want to draw cards. If you can thin your deck out a little bit, then maybe that's good. But I don't think that's going to be the consistent thing that those decks need. And you're going to have to watch out. They have the biggest burst in the game anyways, so you don't even need to worry about what your opponent's doing on turn 6. Another positive about Kang is that he works in almost every deck. Even that Mr. Negative deck I was just talking about that might not really need it. Why not? I mean, you could put Kang in almost anything, because knowing what your opponent's about to do to try and win the game, that's really, really important information. But he doesn't have direct synergy with anything. There's nothing like where I'm like, oh, like with Stature, it was like Black Bolt or Moon Knight and Stature. That's great. Kang, it's like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there is something I'm missing. I'm not always keen to those crazy combos right off the hop, but I feel like for the most part, this is just a value card, which is really good, but not really like directly synergizing with something else, which almost makes it a better purchase for 6,000 tokens, right? Because you don't need the accompanying card. It's kind of like the Silver Surfer dilemma with the Maximus and Brood. A lot of people didn't want to pick up Surfer because they didn't have the accompanying support cards. Kang just kind of does it all on his own, unless he gets Cosmoed. Oh, the dog prevails once again against another big bad. It's shutting down Galactus. It's shutting down a lot of Thanos' stones, but still doesn't really beat Thanos. But then it's also shutting down Kang the Conqueror. Cosmo always reigns supreme. Okay, I know that was a lot of information dump, but there's just so much to cover about this card, and I still am torn about whether I'm going to pick it up or not. So let me know if you are in the comments below. Is there something I have missed? Am I blind to the value that is Kang the Conqueror, or is he a little overhyped? Is he not going to end up being the card that people need? Information is great, but if you can read your opponent's decks anyways, then you're better off. If anything, you might give your opponent a second chance. You might have won the game with your line of play, with the cards that you had available, and now you've let them second guess their play and they do something else that you didn't expect, and you end up losing. So does Kang look incredibly fun? Yes. Does he have amazing variants? Yes. Am I going to get him? I don't know. But it sure is fun to talk about new cards and speculate about how they will do, or if they are worth those crazy price tags. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I will catch you guys next time.